Panorama. How an ancient law is being used to tackle gang violence.
Sends a message out there on our streets in England that you go in a gang, whatever part you take and that person dies, you're going down for murder.
Being there, even if you don't strike a blow or use a weapon, can be enough.
Anybody and everybody that is involved at an incident of violence, we will look to identify them, and if the evidence is there, then we will look to prosecute them. Standing by is not a defence.
This man is wondering how he came to be jailed for murder, and he's far from the only one.
Do you think that you were responsible for murder that night?
I sit here every day and think the same thing. Am I a con? Am I an inmate? Am I an offender? Honest answer, I don't know.
Do you know what your kids are up to? Do you know who they hang around with and how their friends would react if trouble started? Important questions, because if violence did occur, which resulted in someone's death, then there is a genuine risk that your son, or daughter for that matter, could end up serving life for murder. It's a powerful deterrent, but is it also leading to the wrong people going to jail?
A violent crime is about to happen. A low-level confrontation about to get out of control. This is a film made by the Metropolitan Police. But a teenage fight turning into murder is a situation that's all too real. The sort of street violence that these young people in Manchester and Liverpool fear.
You never truly know one person 100%, so you never know what they're going to be like after they snap. If something pushes them over the edge, you don't know that they're willing to pull out a knife and stab someone.
If I see trouble going on, I'll try to step in and try and intervene and maybe try and rectify it. And who knows how that's going to be perceived from the outside.
We invited these teenagers to watch that police film. I put to them a question, and I put the same question to you. Of these three attackers, who's guilty of murder?
Get off me! Let go, bro. You think I told you that?
So, is it the guy who actually uses the knife? What about the youth who stands next to him throughout the attack? And what about this character who turns away when the knife appears?
In that situation, three people end up having an argument with one bloke. Who do you think is responsible for murder?
I think the guy that stabbed him is guilty of murder.
You think I told you that?
What about the other two?
They didn't assist in this murder at all.
Anybody else?
When they're pushing each other, then they're all around taunting. As soon as you pull the knife out, the other two just start fading away.
So who do you think is guilty of murder?
I think just the main guy.
Just the guy with the knife. Who thinks that just the guy wielding the knife should go down for murder? Hands up. So that is really quite comfortably a majority.
Get off me!
We showed the film to lawyer Julian Knowles, who prosecutes and defends in cases like this, and Professor Jeremy Horder at the Law Commission. They were unanimous in their verdict.
I think there's a strong case for prosecuting them all, really, for murder in that instance, even though that was not what they set out to do when they went along down the alley and into the area where the victim was playing basketball.
This is a relatively clear-cut case where all three are guilty of murder on a joint enterprise basis. I think from the prosecution's point of view, as soon as they cross round the fence and they start advancing towards the victim in a threatening fashion, they've joined the joint enterprise.
I wonder how many people, when they're cheering on a fight that's going on in the school playground or indeed out on the street, if they shout encouragement or they provide some kind of assistance in the form of a stick or whatever, realise that they stand to be convicted of the same offence as the person who's inflicting the injury. I would say very few.
So that means there's a big net. Just being in the wrong place with the wrong person and you could find yourself in big trouble. And you, your son or your daughter, you could find yourself in that group. Joint enterprise is about sharing the responsibility of a crime. Think of a bank robbery. It's not just the robbers in the bank. The lookout and the getaway driver are just as guilty. And if someone gets killed during the raid, they're all guilty of murder. And it's an old law. 300 years ago, it was about duelling, and not just combatants, it was seconds and doctors that were being jailed. But now it has a very modern focus, gang violence.
At midday, there's drama at Leeds Crown Court as 4 young Asian men are sentenced for the murder of a teenager.
5 years ago, on this housing estate in Leeds, a 16-year-old boy was battered to death. Tyrone Clark was chased and set upon by a gang of up to 20 youths armed with baseball bats and CS gas. So this is the key area over here?
This is the key area where my son lost his life.
A plaque marks the spot where Tyrone was killed. 4 men were jailed for his murder. But it's complicated. The fatal blows came from a knife, and even the prosecution accept those convicted of killing Tyrone probably didn't use the blade. They were simply part of the attack. Under joint enterprise, they were jailed for life, even though the knifeman is still free. 4 people are in prison for a life sentence for murder who probably didn't kill your son.
I don't care.
But can that be fair?
Yes. Tyrone's case is clean cut. They killed my son. They're all involved. And they deserve to go down for murder. And that's why I welcome the joint enterprise, because it sends a message out there on our streets in England that you go in a gang, whatever part you take and that person dies, you're going down for murder.
The police are embracing the powers of joint enterprise, the idea that justice can be secured by pursuing the gang as a whole and not just the killer.
I'm here to talk to you today about something called joint enterprise, and in particular murder and the picture of what is youth murder in London. A very big difference.
And this autumn, detectives have started a programme of visits to schools and youth groups to spell out how joint enterprise is being used. As well as that film of the stabbing, there are messages from senior officers that border on the threatening.
If you are involved in a murder in any way, shape or form, we will come to you. We will find you. We will come at a time when you don't expect us, and we will enter your life. We will invade your home. Invariably, your front door will be removed. We will enter. This will be in front of your parents and your family, or possibly your friends, and we will change your life.
How come you can get life for just being there?
Right. Joint enterprise, as a piece of law, is designed to be unforgiving. And it's to stop individuals influencing others to do something. Because
that question, how can I be jailed for just being there? We heard it time and time again. But the police say ignorance is no defence.
How aggressively will you exploit the potential of joint enterprise?
Absolutely, to the full power of the law. It's as simple as that. That it is within our powers, it is part of our legal system, and anybody and everybody that is involved at an incident of violence, we will look to identify them, and if the evidence is there, then we will look to prosecute them.
And is justice served by pursuing those people who were stood with the person carrying the knife?
Yes. Yes, as simple as that. We will look to identify everybody who's there and exactly what part they played and what they did or did not do at the time. Standing by is not a defence.
I thought I was an angel. I thought I didn't do anything. I thought I was innocent.
The police video was inspired by this convicted murderer. Kenneth Alexander, known as Casper, was jailed for his part in a fatal stabbing. I wanted to meet him. And perhaps because of his value as a deterrent to other young people, the prison authorities allowed me into one of Britain's most secure jails.
We all got
I started by showing him that Met Police DVD. He'd never seen it before, which meant he'd never seen the interview with the family of the man he was jailed for killing.
Tried to block that out. All I can remember is just the doctors coming in and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, Michael's gone." We just all collapsed. And every time I think about that moment, I just tried to block it out because it's just too hard to deal with even today. 4 years down the line, it's the same thing. You think it gets easier, but it doesn't.
It don't.
Sorry.
And how often do you run through the events of that night?
I'd be lying to you if I didn't say every day. Every time you got a moment to yourself. Maybe in your cell, maybe you're on the landing by yourself, writing a letter. Every time you see something that reminds you of that day.
Casper Alexander's life was changed by events that lasted just 2 minutes. It was April 2005. Alexander found himself caught up in a feud between two groups of youths. Nick Sumner, that detective from the classroom presentation, worked on Alexander's case.
The foundations of that incident was nothing more than a bit of bullying that started in school and that had continued in some form or another outside of school. And it was one of their friends, a chap called Daniel. A minor incident in a local McDonald's many years later, 2 years later after all of this had started, a bit of pushing and shoving in a queue. That was the start of that conflict.
The fatal fight happened outside the house of one of Casper Alexander's friends. First, there'd been the incidents at McDonald's. Then the gangs had clashed on this street. Casper Alexander and his group were chased away, but they came back when the coast was clear. Fatally, the rival gang returned too, and argument turned to violence when Alexander's friend was hit.
We got struck on the ear. Blood went everywhere. I couldn't believe it. It was, at the time, I thought it was a knife, but it was a belt buckle. It was a belt buckle he got struck with on the ear, and blood went everywhere, went all over the floor, all over the cars. Within seconds of his ear getting touched, pulled out this knife out of his trouser pocket, and he went for him. It happened so quick. It was like, I can remember the sound, like cutting velvet. Whoosh. That's what it sounded like. And then he was on the floor.
Michael Campbell was killed. Another man was stabbed 3 times but lived.
Casper Alexander admits he was part of the argument but says he had no role in the violence. And that's accepted by the police. But they say Alexander knew a knife was present. Along with 4 other defendants, Casper Alexander was found guilty of murder and attempted murder for the attacks that happened on this street. And he was jailed for life.
Do you think that you were responsible for murder that night?
Tough question to ask. Tough question to answer. I sit here every day and think the same thing. Am I a con? Am I an inmate? Am I an offender? Have I committed any crime? Or walk down the landing, fill in applications, get a canteen sheet and think, am I responsible for taking someone's life? Honest answer. I don't know. Some days I think, no, I shouldn't be here. I haven't done anything wrong. I look at that, I think to myself, someone's gone.
The police position is quite clear. They say Casper knew a fight might happen, so he got on his phone and called friends in to make sure his gang was the stronger.
Casper quite clearly states that they had gone together to show that a show of force with their group of friends, not to mess with them. And that, within that scenario, was the joint enterprise. With amongst their peers, they knew what they were going there for. There was going to be a confrontation and there was a group together, working together. Once they got there, it all changed very, very, very quickly.
The world is full of prisoners who say, I shouldn't really be in here, that everybody else deserves their sentence, but I don't deserve mine. Do you think there's something of that in you, that you were part of that murder that night, a man died, and it's right that you serve your sentence?
In terms of joint enterprise, that day, even though I feel like I didn't do nothing, I broke the law. If we're to say joint enterprise, you have to just be there, you couldn't just be there, I broke the law that day. So yeah, I do deserve this murder sentence. I do deserve to be here for 15 years in the eyes of the law.
Gloria Mason is a family friend who believes Casper Alexander's conviction is unsafe.
I think that the joint enterprise has become a bucket category that lots of young people, particularly young men, are just being prosecuted by. It's too easy, it's a lazy law. I don't think it doesn't get to the truth.
Why do you say it's lazy? Somebody died that night. If Casper had been on the phone sort of rallying people, isn't that playing a role in a crime that eventually led somebody to lose their life?
Well, in my opinion, murder means that you actually intend to take somebody's life. I think in this, day and age where young people do hang out together because, and they all make mistakes, but there was no intent on Casper's part to take somebody's life. There wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have had a knife. He never did carry knives. Unfortunately, he did know people who did, but that still doesn't make him guilty of murder.
Whilst Casper was not a knife man, he was with a knife man, a man he'd known for many years. And it was his involvement with that individual who was carrying a knife and who was willing to use it enabled that joint enterprise piece of legislation within that prosecution case. If he hadn't shown support for Carl, the knife man, that incident wouldn't have taken place.
So Casper Alexander didn't kill anybody.
But he'll be in here for 15 years. Is that fair? Or is he effectively collateral damage in a wider battle to clear our streets of gangs?
As we've seen from the Met video, when it comes to fighting the gangs, joint enterprise is the weapon of choice. But does that mean it's being pushed too far? There is a high-profile case that saw joint enterprise being used at the furthest reaches of its power.
3 teenagers have been found guilty of kicking a man to death outside his home in Warrington in Cheshire. Gary Newlove had confronted the gang because he was determined to stop them from drinking and vandalising cars in his street.
My soulmate has gone and I just want to see and hear Gary. To have to turn off his life support machine because of this needless and senseless act, I find hard to comprehend.
This is a case I've visited before for Panorama. Gary Newlove, a father of 3 from Warrington, murdered when he challenged a group of youths he suspected of vandalising his car. The gang was caught here on CCTV just before the attack took place. Zoe Newlove, Gary's daughter, was there that night.
So my dad's just walking with him.
Just kind of walking. We've seen that CCTV, haven't we? And so they're just moving away down this road. And where are you? Still here?
Yeah, I'm just stood there.
You're still stood here, and your dad's moved off down there. So can you still hear him talking?
Yeah, because they were shouting. My dad wasn't shouting.
By this stage they're shouting, yeah?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
That's when they just all started, swearing at him, and then he went towards one of them, and then they just started hitting him.
Adam Swellings, Stephen Sorton and Jordan Cunliffe were convicted under joint enterprise of murder and given life sentences. 2 others were acquitted. Gary Newlove died from a kick to the neck. There's no weapon in this case beyond hands and feet, and there's no suggestion there was any kind of plan. Swellings and Sorton led the violent assault, but Cunliffe's case is more complicated. He denies taking part in any of the attack, and the evidence against him is much weaker. Cunliffe's mother says he was in the wrong place with the wrong people.
I don't forget that a man died that night, and I don't forget that Helen Newlove has lost her husband and that, her daughters have lost their father. I don't forget that, and I can thoroughly understand their grief. My concern right now for me
is that my son didn't touch Gary Newlove. He didn't encourage anyone to touch Gary Newlove, and he shouldn't be where he is right now.
Arguably, it was events a week before Gary Newlove was murdered that were crucial in the conviction of Jordan Cunliffe. The prosecution say that here in this park, right here in fact, Jordan and his friends were involved in a violent attack, an attack that started here but spilled out into the surrounding streets. Because if Jordan Cunliffe was there the week before, it could condemn him. It would show he was part of a joint enterprise, a group that routinely got drunk and caused trouble. Cunliffe would be aware they were violent when challenged, so when a week later Gary Newlove confronted them, Cunliffe would know what could happen, and that would mean he was guilty of murder. His mother says that's wrong. He wasn't there that night.
I was with him that night. He was in my house with me. So I know for a fact that anyone who says that he was out on the 3rd of August, they're not telling the truth, or they've got it wrong, or they're mistaken. So I know for a fact that the 3rd of August, Jordan wasn't even in Warrington. He was at home with me in Wigan.
Sir Janet Cunliffe says Jordan was with her on the night of August the 3rd. That's a crucial night, so let's focus on exactly what happened in that park. Well, there were only a handful of people there, and Panorama has discovered they weren't all interviewed by the police, so we've tracked them down. Panorama has found a crucial new witness who says she was here that night. She told us it was dark and hard to see everything, but that she saw the trouble start, and she's sure that Jordan Cunliffe wasn't there. Now, our witness doesn't want to be interviewed or named, but she has provided a signed statement to Jordan Cunliffe's legal team, who are hoping to challenge his conviction.
It is potentially significant because the jury were entitled to firstly take into account the incident of the 3rd of August as showing a propensity to violence, and secondly, if a man had been attacked and used with violence, then you should expect that a similar sort of thing might occur on a subsequent occasion if there is disorderly behaviour and somebody comes out and tries to stop it.
There are other factors. Jordan Cunliffe was virtually blind, a fact accepted by prosecution and defence. But does any of this matter? Well, not according to the law, remember. It's a fact that Jordan Cunliffe was there the night of the murder. And we've heard the police say that if you're there, you watch and you do nothing, you're potentially as guilty as those who kick and punch. Why are you so sure that Jordan was not part of that attack?
There's no evidence to suggest that he did, that he was.
Here's a point. Isn't it in some ways the case that he was in that group that moved towards Gary Newlove, and under the rules of joint enterprise, then everybody is responsible?
Well, there were 15 to 20 other people there that night.
But there is evidence, witnesses who say he was right in the middle of it.
Yeah,
Isn't it the case that he was part of that? And under a situation like that, then that is murder.
Yeah, if Jordan had taken part in any way whatsoever, I would want to know, and I would want him to tell me. Because if I have a son who's capable of doing something like that, I would want him to be punished.
I went with Janet Cunliffe to see her son in jail. Cunliffe is in this young offenders unit near Birmingham. He has another 10 years to serve before he can be considered for parole. I spent an hour talking to him in prison. I actually found him quite an open, pretty straightforward character. That doesn't make him innocent, but it makes him plausible. And when I put to him this idea that, you know, he'd been through a joint enterprise trial and where that left him, and he said, look, all the way through it, I thought, I didn't do anything, I didn't see anything until I got to the scene, I won't go to jail, and now I'm in jail. And he said, if I get out, I will never go out in a group of lads again, because the risks are too high. And that is the sort of reaction the police want. But what does Gary Newlove's widow think of all this?
If you murder somebody, if you attack them, these are physical acts which the jury can then decide on the evidence whether they happened or whether they didn't. Joint enterprise is a thought. It's the thought that was in Jordan Cunliffe's head that night. How are we in a position to jail him for 15 years? Is that justice?
No, it's not justice, 15 years, to be perfectly honest. Life should mean life.
Would you stand there watching somebody else kicking and punching? Would you actually think that was right to watch even if you didn't do the act? Because I certainly wouldn't. They were as guilty as the person doing the act.
Why?
Why? Gosh, that's a good question. Without getting my... why are they guilty? If you're saying that Jordan Cunliffe did not attack my husband, he certainly stood next to that body and watched the beating and beating. Now that to me means that you're unstable in your mind, and actually you're as guilty as a person because you're watching that act. You're guilty of that act.
It is perhaps understandable that victims support a broader interpretation of guilt. But some of those involved in the courts are less convinced. The most senior judge in the country, Lord Phillips, has gone on record to say joint enterprise is unfair. The Law Commission too have concerns.
It may be the case that joint enterprise is being used to try and scoop up all the members of a gang into the commission of an offence, where actually the position may be more complicated. It may be that only some members of the gang endorsed or encouraged or helped the killing. Others did nothing of that sort, but they're all being scooped up in with it. Whether that's true or not, I think, will be an extremely hard question to answer.
What we can do is present the best evidence that is available and outline, as far as we can establish, that this was the role of each and every individual. And it goes through a threshold test. Prior to even getting before the court, we have to satisfy the Crown Prosecution Service that there is a case to answer.
So where does all this leave our young people, the slice of the population most likely to be affected by joint enterprise? Well, for them it's a law they don't understand and don't trust.
So after what we showed you, and now you know about joint enterprise, would any of you change the way that you are, the way that the places that you'd go, the things that you do, the people you know? Would you change anything?
Think about what I'm doing when I go out and who I'm going out with.
People need to know more about this law because I don't know anything about it.
Would you change the people you hung around with on the basis of what you saw yesterday?
No, definitely not, because I think the law is quite awkward, do you know what I mean? They haven't thought about it properly. I wouldn't look at my friends in a different way because of that.
Everyone knows someone who's a bit crazy, but at the end of the day, why are you responsible for someone else's actions?
Senior prosecutors, senior police officers have told me that those young people have a point and the law needs reforming. But it's politically unpopular to reduce sentences and politically popular to keep jailing gangs.
So if you, your son or your daughter are out in a group tonight, you better make sure you know about joint enterprise.
The Ministry of Justice has told us they are looking at the rules on joint enterprise, but only in the wider context of reforming the law on secondary parties in murder. Next week, lukewarm on climate change? As politicians dither, we report on the green doers, not the talkers.
How people's lives entwined together is one of life's mysteries. But they say God works in mysterious ways. And if there is no God, someone's having a fine joke at our expense.
Mother country needs men to fight for her.
Mrs. Bly, I presume.
People call me Queenie.
They need to pack their bags and leave now!
Make it! Why are you back?
My wife. Man.
This island is too small if you have big dreams, Celia.
Small Island, new two-part drama, starts Sunday the 6th of December on BBC One.
Tree felling versus tree hugging. Which is better for the environment? Country File investigates in an hour. Now on BBC One's Science Zone, 5 minutes later than scheduled, it's A Bug's Life.